He's just pushed a little leaflet over at me. I love this. Men in Sheds. I've heard of this and I cannot wait to talk to you gentlemen about this. Richard Anstey is from Dunstable. And he's brought his pal, Terry, in as well. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
It's very nice to have you here. Thank you very much indeed. Two distinguished chaps, might I say. Now, Richard, you very sadly lost your good lady, your wife. She passed away in 2016. And you very bravely have come on tonight to talk about how lonely you felt after that. And that is something that a lot of people will identify with, yet perhaps don't feel brave enough to actually admit to anybody. So talk us through that time.
It was in September 2016 when she passed away. Mm-hmm. And of course, for the first few months, you're all over the place. You don't know where you are. And
because your wife, you knew sadly that she was going to pass. She had cancer.
Had terminal cancer for six years. She lasted and an invalid and so forth. But so I felt that I was getting, well, I don't know what you would say lonely, but it's being without a companion, and you're isolated, if you know what I mean. There's only so many things you can do around the house and so forth, and you don't get out and see people. So
is it the silence as well? Because my grandmother, she's been widowed for a long time, and my grandfather's been passed away 30 years, but she desperately misses him. But it's the silence. Yeah.
Well, when you've been, we were married 58 years, and the house is quiet. There's no doubt about it, So yeah, that was one of the things I must agree. So I thought, well, something must be done, and got wind of Men in Sheds, and I'm always been a person that's always tiddling about doing things, and preparing things. Like I was at a fete in Aylesbury somewhere, and the Men in Sheds, evidently there's one in Aylesbury, has a stall. They were selling the things, and they said, well, as far as they know, there was one started up in 2017 in Dunstable. Mm-hmm. So onto the old internet we go.
Excellent, well done with that.
And looked them up, and walked along there one day, looked in the door. They look a decent sort of chaps, They
didn't quite put you off. Because actually that takes an awful lot of guts actually to do that, to put yourself. Can I ask as well, what made you think that something must be done? Well, did you get to a point where you thought, I can't cope with this loneliness anymore? I mean, what was that motivation?
No, I could have coped. I'm used to being on my own. I don't mind my own company, but you've got to get out and do something. And ladies have all these clubs and things they can do with women's institutes and sewing and so forth. But
did you feel lonely though? Because I know you said you like your own company, yeah, but you did feel it.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
So
you found the Men in Sheds, and this is great. And I do you know what? I absolutely, honestly, I love it. Let's be honest. I don't want to generalise, chaps, but you know what? Guys like sheds. I mean, it's kind of a rite of passage. And I said to my husband the other day, who had his birthday, and I said, that's it. I know you're moving into a different decade now, chap. I said, because you are getting genuinely excited about popping out to buy a shed. And I have to admit, boys, I have a little penchant for a shed as well, actually. So Men in Sheds, I mean, as you say, I think it's it's a great idea. So what do you, and obviously we've got Terry here as well. So Men in Sheds, so you popped along, poked your head around the door and thought, okay, these chaps look all right. So what actually is the setup? Is it a load of guys in a shed, and what do you do? I mean, talk me through it.
We drink tea and biscuits.
Yes, all your tea and biscuits.
Are you sure there's nothing a little stronger in there?
No, definitely not. We have a setup in the shed that democratic. We've got a chairman and a secretary and people doing projects. So we're set up properly.
So what do you do then? So how often do you meet, and what are these projects?
Well, at the moment, when I first joined, I think it was on a Monday, a Wednesday, or a Friday, from 10 o'clock till 1:30 or something like that.
1 o'clock.
And but I've only been there sort of 6 months, and in the 6 months, the need for this sort of setup is obviously very great, because we're just the membership. People are coming, so to
That's
join,
terrific.
and it's a place that for men to come and have a chat.
Can anyone come?
And
Is there certain?
yes, you've got
do you
to be
have to be
55
right? Yep.
plus.
Okay, and that's it. You don't have to have lost your partner, or it's
No,
anyone can
A lot of the
trot
members
up.
have retired or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And they want to come do bits and pieces. And we also do projects for the community, the local school we've got, haven't we?
Yes, several local
And
schools.
any projects that the children want for nest boxes or seats round in the school or in the playground.
As well, actually. So Men in Sheds, I mean, as you say, I think it's an absolute, it's a great idea. So what do you, so and obviously we've got Terry here as well, so Men in Sheds, so you popped along, poked your head around the door and thought, okay, these chaps look all right. So what actually is the setup? Is it a load of guys in a shed, and what do you do? I mean, talk me through
We
it.
drink tea and biscuits.
Oh yes, all your tea and biscuits.
Are you sure there's nothing a little stronger in there?
No, definitely not. We have a setup in the shed that democratic. We've got a chairman and a secretary and people doing projects. So we're set up properly. It's
So what do you do then? So how often do you meet, and what are these projects?
well, at the moment, when I first joined, I think it was on a Monday, a Wednesday, or a Friday, from 10 o'clock till 1:30 or something like
1
that.
o'clock.
And I've only been there sort of 6 months, and in the 6 months, the need for this sort of setup is obviously very great, because we're just the membership. People are coming, so to
That's
join,
terrific.
and it's a place that for men to come and have a chat.
Can anyone come?
And
Is there certain?
yes, you've got
do you
to be
have to be
55
right?
plus.
Yep. Okay, and that's it. You don't have to have lost your partner, or it's anyone
no.
can
A lot of the
trot
members
up.
have retired or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And they want to come do bits and pieces. And we also do projects for the community, the local school we've got, haven't we?
Yes, several local
And
schools.
any projects that the children want for nest boxes or seats round in the school or in the playground. Maybe a designated person in the shed, I don't know.
I like that.
We only have maximum 20 members, but if we get more than about 5 to 7 turn up each session, we're crowded. We're back to back virtually for space. We need space. This is what we need. We need more space just to function properly.
Okay, and so is it something that you're looking at trying to do to sort of expand it as much as you can then, in order to facilitate
Well, at
it?
the moment, we have the facility that Dunstable Town Council have been very kind and forthcoming with. They have a store shed.
Mm-hmm.
And the store shed, they've let us have half of it.
Right.
Not all of it, half of it. And we've got to the stage now where we've got equipment like saws and all these sort of planers and all these sort of things that you need, and we are stuck for space.
Right.
But at the moment, we're surviving, but, space would be...
Would be welcome.
Well,
Would be
yes,
welcome.
if anybody's got a large warehouse or something.
Well, I mean, if you
sure
are
we can fit
listening,
it.
local businesses, I mean, how can you resist Richard and Terry from Dunstable Men in Sheds? Gentlemen, please stay with us. Thank you for being so open and honest, and from turning what must have been a very, very tough time, Richard, into something which I'm really hearing is a lot more positive, and really just being brave enough to say, as you say, particularly men struggle to talk
Yes,
about their
yeah.
feelings, and I can see how much of a positive impact that's had on your life. So thank you. Well, if you're happy to stay, please do, because I'd love you to join in our next chat as well, and we'll give you some details more on the Men in Sheds as well in just a moment.
Thank you very
But first things first, let's have a little bit more music. This is Christine and the Queens. It's $5. You're listening to me, Anna Williamson, on BBC Three Counties Radio. This is the Mental Health Hour. Queens, $5, BBC Three Counties Radio. Good evening, you're listening to me, Anna Williamson. It's BBC Three Counties Radio, and this is the Mental Health Hour. Lovely to have you with me tonight, and I've still got my wonderful guests, Richard and Terry from Dunstable Men in Sheds. You happy to stick around, boys? You look very comfortable, which is very, very nice. Thank you very much. Also, before I forget, if you want to find out anything about Men in Sheds, you can go to dunstablemeninsheds.org.uk and find out a little bit more. And I think the gentlemen were very strongly hinting, and if anyone would like to give them a little bit more space, that would be very welcome. It's such a worthy cause. It's helping gentlemen in loneliness. Gentlemen as they move into their plus 55 years that perhaps fancy having a few more friends and a few more hobbies, which I think is brilliant. Now, Terry and Richard, I wanted you to stay on because my final guest of this evening, who's joining me on the phone, is going to talk to us all about loneliness as well, because obviously loneliness has been a huge drive in the media this week. The Sainsbury's Living Well Index has reported that 1 in 10 are feeling lonely. That's 6 million people here in the UK. And this spans a whole range of people, huge demographic, from first-time mums to single guys living at home, people that are out of work, and of course, people that are slightly older as well. But loneliness can lead to all sorts of other problems, and one of them amongst them is malnutrition. Older people in particular, who rarely leave the house and have fewer visitors, they're less likely to eat well. But researchers at the University of Hertfordshire are trying to educate supermarkets to understand better what these people's needs are. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Wendy Willis from the university and who led the research. Good evening, Wendy.
Hello.
This is a really important piece of research.
It is. We think it is because we spoke to people across Hertfordshire aged 60 to 93 to find out how they get food, and the difficulties that they might face, whether it's doing their own shopping, no longer being able to drive, not having anyone to eat with, not having access to Meals on Wheels if they needed that, to really get a good picture of all the kind of challenges, one of which came out as being, as the issue you said, of the risk of becoming malnourished and having no one to eat with.
And I think a lot of people will actually really identify with this. And perhaps it is something that until now, would it be correct to say we haven't really given a great deal of considered thought to?
It would, because I think it's a hidden problem. I mean, malnutrition, for example, 93% of people that are malnourished, it is people living in their own homes. It's not happening in care homes and hospitals. That's an additional problem. So we're only now trying to really raise awareness that people who have smaller appetites, which a lot of people do in later life, but really need to have a higher intake of calories and perhaps need to be eating different foods than they did before. And of course, if you're living alone and you're not used to that, or you've become depressed, or you're less mobile and you're not able to get to the shops, you might not even realise that you've not been eating enough. And before you know it, you are losing weight. Your trousers are too big, your wedding ring's too big on your finger. And if no one's helping you to realise the sort of the risk of that and the damage it can be doing, then it really can be quite a significant problem for people.
And so this sort of research, it sounds like you're targeting everybody, the people themselves, to help them remember. I know it sounds a bit obvious, but to remember to eat and the importance of eating properly, but also perhaps to family members and people around to help be aware of how important it is to encourage your family members to eat, because loneliness is a huge part of eating. I'm 37, but if my husband's out for the evening, do I bother to cook myself a meal? No, I don't, because I don't. Richard and Terry, from what this research has come through from Wendy, does this resonate with you at all?
In my case, my wife was ill for a long time, so I was doing most of the household cooking and so forth. But no, I rather relish cooking. I quite like it.
Have you always cooked, or was it something that you had to learn?
I had to learn. I'm still learning. I'm still burning pans.
You're never too old to learn anything, right?
But I do look after myself food-wise, I must confess. Yeah.
And is that something that you, listening to this research which has come through from Wendy, does that shock you or surprise you, or can you see how people may fall into this trap of not eating properly?
I can quite understand it, but also when you go to buy food, it's very difficult to buy for one. All the foods are packed in 2s or 4s or 6s or 8s, which means you have to do a lot of dividing up and putting in the deep freeze and this sort of thing.
And is it something that you just know yourself, or did you have any other family members or anyone else prodding you saying, make sure you eat properly? Or is it just your own common sense?
Everybody like you.
Exactly, keep telling you. How about you, Terry? How has that affected you? Are you a whiz in the kitchen?
No, until my wife died, I'd never cooked.
Right. So how did that? I mean, a lot of people will find themselves in that situation.
I had to learn a whole new lot of skills, but I'm learning. I'm still learning, but I'm not losing much weight, unfortunately.
Well, you look like you look very, very well, might I say? But that's the whole point. Thank you, chaps. Wendy, I mean, what Terry and Richard have said there, is that quite common from what you're hearing?
Yeah, and I think some people do like to continue to cook, or the challenge of learning to cook, as Terry just said, after his wife died. We've met lots of gentlemen over the years, actually, whose partners have died, and they've been faced with the first time buying food and learning how to cook it. And some people really sort of genuinely enjoy that challenge. And for others, I think they are more willing to think, okay, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to actually go and eat out more. And whether that's a community lunch group or through a church group, for example, or whether it's eating in cafes and meeting up with other like-minded people. And that's one of the recommendations from our research, is that people do sort of reach out and think, what kind of group might I want to interact with? You know, whether it's men in sheds or women doing sewing and crafting, or whether it's other kinds of meet-up groups, because we're all different. We all have different interests. And I think when people can find something meaningful to do, that means it becomes an enjoyable experience again to eat. If it has become a bit of a lonely time for them, then that makes all the difference. I mean, yesterday I was talking to one of the dietitians at our local Meals on Wheels provider in Hertfordshire, who are a fantastic organisation, and she was saying, you know, even 5 minutes of somebody delivering a Meals on Wheels meal and having a quick little chat and a bit of a laugh with the person they're delivering to, that person might not see anybody else all week. You know, if that's the only interaction they're getting, then 5 minutes of somebody smiling at you and caring about you is really important. You know, we can't underestimate those kind of fleeting relationships. It doesn't just have to be deep and meaningful relationships like Richard and Terry are developing with their men in sheds.
It's human interaction, it really is. And actually, a lot of the studies that did come through this week is that the most lonely people in the UK are the ones that eat alone. So I think it's really interesting research. University of Hertfordshire, you were celebrating the Malnutrition Awareness Week as well, which I think is a really great idea. And you have a new educational board game as well. So where can anyone go, Wendy, if they want to find out more about this?
The board game has its own website called thefoodinlaterlifegame.co.uk, and the game is aimed at groups really who train or work with older people and want to support them to not be malnourished and to eat well into later life. So we want the supermarkets to buy it. We want lunch groups to buy it, carers organisations, etc. It's a bit of an eye-opening game to make you think through, if you were losing your sight and if you could no longer drive, how would you get food, or how would you find out about a lunch group or somewhere where you could eat with other people so that you can stay well. So that's how we want people to sort of use it as a bit of a talking point, really, to think how difficult it might become when you just can't get food in the way that you have in the past.
It's about getting that conversation started. Wendy Wills, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you very much, Anna.
Great stuff. And of course, gentlemen, Terry, Richard, thank you for joining us and sharing us your story. I must say congratulations. I've seen the little award you've won. Is it a little award?
Yes, yeah.
So do you want to tell us about it quickly?
Terry.
Go on, Terry.
It's I've forgotten the name of the
Health and Wellbeing. It says they're recognising projects which use the local environment to promote mental and physical health.
Yes.
Dunstable Men in Sheds, and there's a very dashing picture of you all. Congratulations.
Was they dashing?
They've been flinging leaflets at me, and I absolutely love it.
Yes, we won the award of the Health and Wellbeing group.
Congratulations.
But there was other groups. I can mention Incredible Edible of Dunstable, who won one, and the Vale School at
Terrific.
just over the way.
Sharing the love there. Well,
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. All the very best with dunstablemeninsheds.org.uk if anyone wants to join. You look very happy chaps to me indeed. Thank you very much for joining me. And thank you indeed for joining me this evening. This is, of course, the Anna Williamson Show, the Mental Health Hour. Please do get in touch with me about anything to do with my show. It's anna.williamson.co.uk. And next week in my first Ask Anna,